You're listening to Mixing Mindsets. I'm Andrew Blank.
And I'm Eric Navrosky, and we hope you find some value out of these conversations about lifestyle, music, and more. Welcome back to Mixing Mindsets. Today we're going to be talking about the power of productivity.
Yes, productivity. I came up with this thought this morning, actually, because I was listening to a couple of podcasts, and I thought it'd be a good topic to discuss, just because I feel like we are two extremely productive people. And I think
I'm trying to be.
So am I. But I think it works out to our benefit, like in the long term.
Yeah.
And I think that really speaks to the person that you're going to become, or like the person you want to be, or the person you want to become.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, there's when we talked about the list, this is a really great example of putting that into action. And
Yes.
I think about small picture and big picture.
Yes.
Right. I think big picture, like, all right, 5 years, 10 years, all of that kind of stuff. And you think, what do I want my studio to look like? What do I want my bands to look like? What do I want this podcast to look like long term? And then you start like branching that out and subcategorizing it. And
Right.
then on a day-to-day basis, you're saying, what has to happen today to make sure that the podcast gets to the big picture?
Exactly.
Or the bands or the studio and everything else that we do.
And I think that's a huge thing to touch on, because it took me a while to understand that concept. Even though I feel like everyone has heard it, it's just difficult for people to implement that
think so.
whole big picture concept. You have your goals that you want to attain, but most people tend to give up sooner rather than later, just based on the fact that they can't get there immediately.
Yeah, quick.
There's that immediacy that they can't attain. There's that instant gratification that they can't get. And
Well, they talk about, people talk about the culture that we live in being a instant gratifying culture.
True.
It's like, everyone talks about fast food and like social media and the dopamine hits and all that other stuff you get
Right.
off of it. But to really build your brand, to build yourself, even as personal growth, even
Yes.
if you don't have a brand, but if you're really trying to say, like, where do I want to be as a human in 10 years?
right.
Where am I going to get, how am I going to do that? And I think looking big picture is hard for people to do
Yes.
because it is void of the quick
Of the
stimulus.
the subcategories that you have to attain. It has to be goal oriented, and you have to break it down into the smallest piece that you could.
Yeah.
And when you're able to attain one, you're able to get the next thing, which might be a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger. And myself included, because I was just a big. I just happened to be that type of person that always just gave up halfway or something.
Oh,
like
no.
that. Yeah, but I'm trying to not be that person anymore.
My dad always says, you did half a job.
Exactly. It took me a really long time to understand that, patience is the process. And people hear that all the time, but it's very difficult to implement that long term.
Right.
And I
Because
think-
you got to find joy in the journey.
Exactly. You have to end
That's
up
hard.
loving the work more than the reward. That's a Jimmy Eat World song, and that
All
lyric
right.
stuck with me.
Shout out Jimmy Eat World.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important that when you start choosing careers and you start going down that path, that you're doing something that is fulfilling beyond money.
Right.
Because there are, there's motivation factors, and money is definitely a big one. But I think when it's only money, you end up being unfulfilled,
Correct.
because that money comes in and you're like, well, cool, I have money, but I hate what I do.
Right.
And I know people in that situation now, and it's hard, it's difficult for them. So, but when people like you and me, where we can do something that's fulfilling beyond the money.
Exactly.
I was telling people when they were asking me, like, oh, I'm going to college, I've a family, younger family, they're going to college. What are you going to do? What is the next thing for me? And I'm like, here's what I did. I found out what I was fulfilled by and what I love doing if money was never a factor. Because if I never had to worry about money, I made all, everything was paid for and I could do whatever I want, then I would still be making records,
Exactly.
because that is so fulfilling to me.
Yeah, it's
to hold a record and to be like, look, I did this.
exactly. It's just like a fulfillment of the soul. It's just
Yeah.
it's hard to explain. I've always been a huge like proponent of the balance between health, wealth, love, and happiness.
Right.
I heard that a while ago, and that's another thing that stuck with me.
With you, yeah.
You kind of have to just balance those four things. And relating back to what you just said about like being fulfilled in the work that you're involved in, I think a big thing that it was difficult for me to understand was the fact that you could also like grow like a little bit of hatred for the thing that even like completely fulfills you over time. But it's like it's overwhelmingly positive enough that you want to stay in it long term.
Yeah. I mean, there's positives and negatives to
I think
everything that
and that was a big
doing.
that was a big like eye-opening moment for me that like you have to stay in it no matter what.
Right.
So what are you going to stay in long term that you're not going to grow like utterly disgusted with forever?
Yeah, and keeping yourself like on that positivity.
Exactly.
As we talked about before.
You sometimes have to remind yourself that like you love it, and that's enough to hang on and always want to be a part of it. Yeah. Like there are days when even right now there's coffee in my hand. Like I'm tired, but we're gonna go make music today, and I love that.
Right. And I think of people like Gabby, your wife, when she'll say, sometimes there's hard days,
right?
But overall, I love what I do.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean that that every day you're going to come home and be like, I love everything. What a great day.
Exactly.
But yeah.
For our audience, my wife is a nurse, and obviously right now during the pandemic is one of the most difficult things. Yeah. One of the most difficult times to be a nurse probably in our lifetime.
Right.
But her mentality is just along the lines of like, I have very bad days, but I love what I do, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And that speaks to me in so many ways, and I try to implement that into my life as much as I could, and I think we're both huge proponents of that.
And I think that's what, to relay it back to the topic at hand, that's what keeps you productive.
Exactly.
Because if like I said, if your only motivation factor is money, well, eventually you're going to not like really be productive in what you're doing anyways, because that hit dwindles. Like, the money satisfaction dwindles, and you're just like, well, I'm miserable and I hate this. Exactly. So you're not going to give it your all.
Yeah. There's something I right now being 27, I've like grown more aware of the fact that people get old and bitter, and I'm like always mindful of like, okay,
not me.
Like this is not going to be me. I'm going to make sure that I'm setting myself up in a spot where I know 20 years from now I'll be fulfilled and happy to the best of my ability. Yeah, I think I see like. No offense to the random people that you come across, but like I feel like I've just ran into a handful of them that are just kind of like you kind of you're on the older side, and why are you so mean? I feel like I've worked enough retail to be like,
oh my gosh,
people are mean.
Yeah, I've certainly worked the retail where I'm like, why you got to treat people like this?
Exactly. And just like if we were outside of this scenario, what you wouldn't be like that, would you?
Yeah, right.
So I'd stay the heck away from you.
I've certainly worked places where I'm like, I'm 19, 20 years old. Like, you don't got to be screaming at me like this.
Exactly, right?
I
feel like we've all been there.
I didn't do anything to you. I'm just trying to get my $7.50 an hour.
Exactly, right? Just being out of high school, it's traumatizing. But I think that kind of is the beginnings of grounding you in that thought process of like, I want to not be here. How do I get out of here? Yeah. And just the world that the way the world is set up is just you have to work. That's just, right. And you have the option of choosing where to work. Yeah. And you should obviously just set yourself up in the right place so when you are that age, you're not that person that that's walking into the grocery store yelling at the 15-year-old cashier.
Right.
If that happens, I don't know. I'd have to do some serious life changing if I became that person.
I don't think it ever will. I really don't. But I think, going back to productivity and how to keep that up. Yes. I think back to a story for myself because I do think that this relates way more than just like business and building a brand. Absolutely. I do believe that word productivity, it does lend itself to that business sort of jargon, you know,
Yes.
when someone's like productivity, you know, you think of spreadsheets and all that stuff, but I do believe
Exactly.
it goes into personal growth too.
Yes.
So a great example in my life was I was 18 years old and I was so bad at talking. I was so bad at talking to people. I was
Right.
terrible at making friends.
Right.
And it was something that I noticed because my dad was like, he took me to a seminar where I was going to see a professional drummer play. I think I was like 16 years old.
Right.
And it was a woman. I forgot her name. But at the end of it, there was like only 20 kids in the class. Like it was a college class, but it was like people were invited. So
Right.
I was able to go even though I wasn't in college.
Yeah.
And he's like, "We'll go up and talk to her." And I'm like, "What do you mean go up and talk to her?" I was like, "I'm not going up and talking to her."
That would have been the
Like,
same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember I got an earful. My dad was like, how could you be like this? Like, you're never gonna be able to get anywhere if you won't talk with someone. And
Yeah.
it was an eye-opening experience. Because I'm not saying anything would have really come out of
Exactly.
speaking to her specifically.
It was
Maybe
more
it
so
did.
like the chances went from, like 5% to
To
zero.
nothing. Yeah, to nothing. And if you don't shoot your shot, basically, and just talk. And I've noticed like the younger people, when they're willing and open to go talking, it kind of is a little exciting to someone older when they see that in a younger person like drive. So like
Right.
when a 16-year-old comes up to me or an 18-year-old or, even 20 or whatever,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is exciting. Like you're excited about, doing something positive,
Right.
growing and, being productive in life. But anyway, so the story goes on and that I took a step back and I was like, well, I don't want to be like this.
Right.
So then around 18, I'm graduating high school. I'm like, I have this opportunity to go to college and change and start being the person that I want to be.
Right.
Whether that is an extroverted person who can hold a conversation down. And that was my big picture.
Right.
Right. So my small picture went to, all right, I'm in this college class. The person sitting next to me, I'm going to talk to. So I start striking up conversations
Yeah.
and start talking and failed miserably.
Right.
Absolutely failed miserably.
Been there myself.
It doesn't change overnight. I made absolutely no friends from my first year of college.
Right.
Which then I dropped out of that school anyways.
Hey.
But yeah. So those are, those little check marks, basically your small picture, your list that you're creating. My list metaphorically or not metaphorically, whatever, in my head
Right.
was talk to the person next to you. So I did.
Yeah. Check mark.
Yeah. Check mark. I did that thing.
There's a little bit of fulfillment in that.
There's success. There was a success there. And like, it's easy to think to yourself like, well, my ultimate goal is to make friends and be all this person. And I could look at that first year of college in a negative aspect and think, well, I didn't make any friends out of that. So I failed. But that's, I think, a bad way of looking at it. You have to look at it from the positive side of things of saying, I needed those experiences to be able to get to where I needed to be.
Right.
So like I needed to fail basically. I needed to talk with people and make no friends.
Oh yeah, failure is a huge thing.
Yeah, to understand. And I think this is kind of cheesy, but like success and failure.
Absolutely.
Because I realized, well, that's not what
Exactly.
how I have to do
you
this.
have to learn what not to do because
Yeah.
if you're successful the entire time, the moment like something fails, your whole foundation just suddenly like shatters right
Yeah.
in front of you.
and I don't think
that-
anyone's successful
exactly.
all the time,
Yeah. And I think it's just how well you could bounce back.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much mental and physical toughness built from failure.
Right. So I check mark these boxes and I say, just talk to the person next to you. Cool. And then another one was I was a commuter to the college, didn't stay on campus. And when they had this like commuter commune thing, it was kind of cool because it felt like an exclusive club.
Right.
It's like, you stay on campus, you can't be here.
Yeah.
But so I would go and I was like, all right, you know what? Just go. Just see if there's anyone, because I was completely by myself there. Like I didn't go to college with friends.
Right.
No one that I went to high school with, like I actually like kept up with
Right.
or anything. So
Yeah.
I was really completely by myself on this campus. And, and just going, I think was something that would push me out of my comfort zone in that box where I was
Another
like,
check
there's
mark.
a check mark.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And then eventually, now you've went to this thing, you check that off. now talk to this person, check that off.
Right.
Right. And, talk to another person, check that off. And the more you do it and the easier it gets, and I think like, to me, that was being productive. That was getting and achieving a goal.
Right.
By doing that stuff, even though in the long run, I didn't make a friend from that experience.
There
maybe
was fulfillment and growth in just doing it.
Yeah. And that is what really ended me up getting the big picture in other avenues and other friendships. And like, there's never a shortage of people that you can talk to.
Exactly.
Of friendships, you can get that anywhere. So that was such a massive, like, productive personal goal.
Right.
Like basically, the moral of the story is that you could think of productivity outside of the realms of business.
Right.
You could think of it
apply
as
to your overall personal growth.
Yeah.
In life, and I think you touched on a lot of good in that right there. Because it's funny because you said you talked about your reminiscing of like your social anxiety and stuff like that, and my brain instantly went back to like myself.
Yeah.
Because I just come from such a similar background, and I think that's a huge misconception people have in regards to like guys in music.
Yeah.
Like I am still to this day like an extremely shy, awkward, anxiety-ridden person. Like there's music didn't change any of that, or anything I do doesn't change that.
Yeah.
I'm just like in a constant battle of like wanting to evolve from that. And there's always like an internal battle that you have to beat.
Yeah.
And that comes from simply just acting and being productive within those social confines every single day. And I come from such a similar background. I was the quiet kid, like always in every given scenario. The fact that I'm doing a podcast right now at 27, if you would have told my 17-year-old self that, he would have been like, he wouldn't even respond. No, he'd just be shaking his head. Then, and then he'd probably just look the other way. And I think that's
go over there.
Exactly. I'm gonna go back home. But I think that's insane how like inadvertently there was just so much growth over kind of this like a similar experience. Lack of certain social groups in your life kind of like force you to become like kind of an adult in a sense where you need to go out and interact with the world in order to kind of build your network and who you're going to become. And it all stems from like telling yourself like you need to accomplish something small today. Let's try to make a friend. And it's like like my brain never even thought of it like a goal. It was kind of just like it stemmed from almost like loneliness, like,
oh no.
And it does. I don't mean it in a sad way. It was just kind of like Andrew. It's just like you're roaming around alone. Let's try to
change it.
Let's change it.
Well, basically, you saw the problem and you're like, well, I've got to fix it somehow.
Exactly. And I think the world gives you gifts a lot of times. I've come across so many people, so many fantastic people that have literally just done. Kind of like the same concept onto myself. Like they kind of looked at me as like, oh, this is a friend I could make, and they were the ones to approach me, and it was just kind of like a mutual. And I've come across so many of those people, and I'm extremely grateful for that because the world kind of throws you a bone when you're kind of in a pickle, and and you just kind of have to keep that glass half full mentality, and if you're willing to give that productivity, I am a firm believer that the world will kind of help you complement whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And that coincides with positivity and just productivity.
It all meshes together. It's
exactly.
all,
there's
thing.
Balance, health, wealth, love, and happiness.
And I think the beauty of the light on the horizon, and the thing that you can always look forward to is that in my experience, it gets easier.
Yes.
The more that you do it, the easier it gets. It's like any other muscle.
Exactly.
You go and you go to the gym and you you curled 20 pounds or whatever. Like
eventually, your biceps are gonna start showing. Eventually,
yeah, and eventually, like that'll get easier.
Yeah,
that weight, whether that is a physical weight or just like a metaphorical weight on your shoulders,
exactly,
will get easier to carry. That burden will get easier to carry. So when I was younger, and I was thinking like, this is really hard.
Yes,
to go and to talk with a random person,
right,
about I don't know what, and there's going to be awkward moments and like that, because that's the thing everyone's afraid of. You're afraid of just sitting there,
the awkward tension of like, I did something weird. Now they're looking at me funny.
Dead silence of just like,
I can't tell you how many times I've just like someone's been like, yo, what's up, and I've just spewed out something nonsensical, and I'm just like, well, I just ruined that before it even started.
Or enjoy your movie. Yeah, thanks you too. Yeah, and it happens, and like that weight becomes heavy at the moment, but it just gets easier and easier and easier. And I've even found the thing that like that one of the things that really helped me in this environment was when those awkward moments happen. It's painful at first, like when I was 18 or you're younger or whatever, and I was like, oh, this is so weird and I hate this. If awkward moments happen now, where maybe a little more few and far between, because I've gotten much better at conversating.
Right.
If it does happen, I could totally just flip it around and make a joke out of it.
Absolutely.
And it's no longer awkward.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things, this is hilarious, one of the best things that I did was, how some people, or you, me, whatever, you accidentally spit when you talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes, and everyone's just like, did you just spit?
Get
like,
a little bit on their shirt or something like that, and they're
happen?
like, I'm going to ignore that.
Well, the best thing, I swear to you, the best thing that I ever did was to start acknowledging that.
That's awesome.
And apologizing for it. It's so funny.
Right.
So like, I'm going off and I'm talking and whatever, and it just happens. I spit.
Right.
And whether it's on you or it's on me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I spit everywhere. I'm so sorry. Right. And then you make a joke out of it, and then it just passes off.
Right.
And nobody thinks of it like ever.
I'm one of those people that like, if I have like a conscious thought of like what I'm going to say, I like overthink it, and then I end up like saying a word wrong or something like that, or like, and like I'll just say something stupid. It'll be like banana, and it'll come out like, and then suddenly I think there's something about just being able to laugh at yourself and create the joke of it, because I think we've noticed that it tends to become like almost like a group joke if you're in that group type of setting. I think we've been in that predicament plenty of times.
Yeah, you make jokes out of it and whatnot. And I really do think that like you gotta basically know how to eat an elephant, just to kind of to wrap this all up and bring it back to like the productivity side. You gotta know how to look at something big and break it down into something small.
Right.
And then be goal oriented about attacking those small things and checking off your boxes on small things, whether you're the type of person to physically write it down or keep it in a mental log or whatever.
Yes.
You got to know how to do that. And by doing that, I promise that one day you'll be able to say and look and be like, I accomplished that big picture.
And being confident and being able to laugh the bad things off in the process. Yeah. I think that's a lot of takeaway from this.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of takeaway from this. And I don't think that process is ever going to stop either. Right. Like for us, we have a big picture right now. Yeah. That is like 10 years from now, when we're 37, 38 years old, what is that going to look like? And by setting yourself up now to realize that you can accomplish these big picture, scary goals kind of thing just by taking it down to a smaller size and doing it that way. Like we've done that already to get to where we're at here. Right. And that won't stop. And I'm hoping that when we're 38,
we just talked about this yesterday. 10 years is gonna pass by. What you do with that time is entirely up to you. Yeah. So if you have a big picture, why not start now? Because if you don't start now, there's a huge chance you won't start. Right. And then 10 years is gonna go by anyway.
Right. My dad says it all the time. Like, how old are you gonna be next year? How old are you gonna be the year after that? Time doesn't stop. So, when we're 38, I'm hoping that we're going to be like, what's our 10-year plan for 48?
Exactly.
And just keep going beyond that. Like eventually, I guess you'll slow down, But
I feel like 75 or something.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, what's my 10-year goal for 85? Yeah, I think that's the way to. I think that is the way to stay productive.
Agreed.
Is by taking that big picture and breaking it into small.
Breaking it down and being confident.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in.